Do you support the idea of women have been oppressed in society?
I think both men and women have been oppressed. Exactly. And I can actually, this is going to be the hot take here.
That was a hot take.
No, hold on. I can actually make an argument that men have been more oppressed.
Please make your argument right now. Please. What? State your case,
this
Brian.
Is such an interesting
Let me ask you a question. Throughout,
just hear him out.
No,
let me ask you a question.
I'm hearing you out right now.
So throughout all human history, and I think that, you know what, this one probably squashes any grievance that I think women could conceivably come up with. Throughout all human history, what percentage would you say of military casualties, if you had to break it up between the genders? What is the percentage breakdown of military casualties?
Well, obviously,
so deaths and injuries.
Obviously, a significantly more amount of men.
99.99999%.
But that's also because in the past, women have not been allowed to.
That's a privilege.
Fight in the military.
That is a privilege.
Do you think if women had been allowed, hold on guys, do you think if women had been allowed to join the military, they would be signing up in droves to get put through the meat grinder of war?
Well, it's also men literally like want to be in it. Like so many men, one of my guy friends told me actually that like all men at some point in their lives like fantasize about being in the military.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of men do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of men are attracted to war. However, this hasn't been a consensual thing throughout human history. Throughout human history, you've had so many emperors and kings that literally just, they will send soldiers to your house. They say, all right, Tanner.
Even in Ukraine right now, going on.
Ukraine right now, people are getting forced to fight in this war. Men weren't allowed to leave the country in Ukraine. You realize this. Women were allowed to leave the country. Men were not allowed to leave the country in Ukraine because they were forced to go to the front lines, right into the meat grinder of war. They were forced to die. This is not something that's happened to women throughout human history.
But women haven't given the opportunity to. I mean, you can make the argument that how many women would, right? Like, that's a good argument. But then you could also say women were not allowed to enlist.
All right, so World War III starts tomorrow. How many of you are enlisting?
Enlisting willingly?
Yep.
Probably wouldn't, but if they told me I had to go, I'd go. Suck it up.
You wouldn't have a choice.
Yeah,
you wouldn't have a choice.
You have to
but
suck it up.
Her point is that women haven't had the option, so that's why it was all dudes.
It's also, I actually come from a military family, like my whole life, and sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. That's all right. My point was just simply that you guys are right. Almost all societies throughout history have been male dominated.
Mm-hmm. But a very small percentage.
It's by a very tiny percentage of men at the top who brutally oppress the majority of the men below them throughout society as well. And yes, women have gotten the raw end of the stick too, but like dudes have had it bad as well for a long time. And we've had more rights in terms of property and speech and stuff like that and voting, but it's been pretty bad for dudes for a long time too.
Those are big deals. Like those are legal issues that women didn't have rights to. And now we're taking away.
Women couldn't vote. Remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
I was alive back then.
What do you think about that?
Wait, about what?
Do you think that women, if you lived back then, right, would you support women not voting? Do you think that that's right and just? Do you think that that's a decision for the men to make, that women are not competent enough to vote? Because that's what it was.
So this is like pretty, I'd say amongst Western countries, this is pretty much the case. So you'll know this before like the mid 1800s, it was pretty much a very small proportion of men had the vote. This concept of voting is an incredibly new concept. Before that, it was just tyrants. You had kings, queens. They're the ones who had power. A very, very small amount of people had power. Yes, there is a bit of a discrepancy there from about the 1800s to the early 1900s, but there is actually a reason for that. One of the reasons is because, and I think we've seen it. So if you want to just go ahead and bring it back, Eric. One of the reasons for you need to go F11 in this StreamYard window, Eric. Thank you. One of the discrepancies, or one of the reasons for that, is because men were the only ones that were subject to military conscription. So the way that men got the right to vote before women is we had to go in the fucking trenches and die. And we had to say we got the right to vote and elect a representative who would be potentially making the decision if we went to war. Women, even to this day in 2022, they're not required to, you have to register, as a man, you have to register with a selective service to this day. We are still subject in 2022 to the military draft. So that's the big thing. That's one of the reasons why we got the vote before y'all, because we had to fucking go and potentially die for our country. Women were able to secure the vote without the corresponding responsibilities and duties. So you actually got, when it comes to voting, you guys actually have an advantage over men. It was never about equality. You got preferential treatment in actuality. Because none of you are subject to the draft, even today.
But what if some women want to be subject?
There are men alive
today.
Be
subject to the draft?
There are men alive today that were subject to the draft. They went to the Vietnam War. They're alive today, so some of them came back. They have probably serious psychological issues. A lot of them are home.